right, today I just wanted to talk to everybody a little bit about how I want the Western horses' tails put up. I think everybody's been doing a really good job helping keep all the tails clean. You guys are doing really good conditioning them, rinsing all the products out, and making sure that the tails are dry before you put them up. But I've seen lots of different methods of how the tail is being put up, so I want to show you how I want it done and explain some of the things I'm looking for when I see a tail put up correctly. So we got Eddie here, and his tail has been freshly cleaned, conditioned, dried. All the knots have been worked out of it. What I want to start off with is I've already sectioned off this top hair that are some shorter feathers, because essentially what I'm going to use those for is that he still has a little bit of tail if he were to switch at a fly, but also to kind of cover the look of having the tail up. It's still to make it look like there's some length to tail, make it look a little more natural. So those shorter feathers I kind of have up and aside. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to see how long his tailbone is. He has a nice short tailbone, and that's good because one of the things I'm looking for is that the tail is as high up as I can get it. When the tails are low and all the way down to the hocks, there is a good chance that they're going to manure on that or urinate on it. So you want to get the tail as high up as you can in order to keep it clean. So his tailbone starts nice and high, so I'm going to go ahead and separate this thick, gorgeous tail into thirds. And just start braiding directly below the tailbone. The first plate or two I might make fairly loose, but then I'm going to start braiding a little bit tighter as I go down. I don't care necessarily, great, how perfect the braid is, as long as it's not getting knotted up. A few stray hairs here and there, that's okay, not a big deal. But keeping it tight is going to keep it from getting unraveled. It's going to keep debris from settling into the tail. So a nice snug braid all the way down. My feathers are starting to come undone, but that's no big deal. I'm not worried about that at all. And just continue braiding almost all the way down. I think depending upon the horse's tail, if their tail is really thick all the way to the bottom, I'm going to braid it all the way to the bottom. However, if the tail really gets thin and ratty at the bottom, then sometimes I might end the braid a little bit earlier, because a really, really thin braid can be very hard to get undone. It kind of gets knotted up. But his tail is nice and thick, so I'm going to braid it almost all the way to the bottom. Now you do have the option of using rubber bands or using electrical tape. For securing the bottom of the braid, either one is fine. I'm really not picky about that. Electrical tape is definitely something that people have started doing the last few years. The reining industry really got into that. And we started using electrical tape in order to keep the hairs from breaking off. But it's not that you can't use rubber bands. Rubber bands are perfectly acceptable. I just prefer the electrical tape. So now that it's starting to get thin, I'm going to stop right there. I feel like if I were to braid those last few strands into there, it's going to get tangled up. So I'm going to leave it about there. I've got some electrical tape, and I am going to just do, I don't know, about 3 wraps around the bottom of it. I'm just pinching off the tail and wrapping that tape around, ripping it off. Then the next thing I want to do is, again, I'm trying to get this as high up as I can so that it's not dragging low. So I'm going to open up that highest plate where I started the braid, and I'm going to take the end of the braid and pull it through. Now, some of my horses have really beautiful tails that are really thick, really long, and we want to get it all up. So I've been noticing a lot of tails where you guys are just looping it through once and leaving like this long tube of a tail. But instead, I want you to go ahead and take it and pull it up, make it a really small ball. I mean, I can maybe fit my 4 fingers in there. And I'm going to try to make a little bun out of this. So I'm pulling it back through for a second time. We have some horses in the barn, you might even be able to pull it through a 3rd time. Because he has these excess strays sticking out, I'm going to kind of tuck it into the center of that bun, just so that they're not sticking out. And then I'm going to grab my electrical tape and bring it around the braid. And again, here probably, I don't know, 3 wraps around. We don't want to be wasting the electrical tape, not that it's expensive, but There's no need to use copious amounts of it. So now I have it really high. It's quite a ways up from his hock. I also have some feathers that can cover that to make his tail look a little more natural and to hide it. Then you also have the option of putting a tail sock in. So I know it's one added step and some people prefer to go without it. However, if horses tend to lay down a lot or get their tail really dirty naturally, or they have a white tail, a palomino tail that's going to stain, then I recommend putting the tail sock on. Otherwise, they're going to set in stains that are going to be hard to get out. So then I'm going to take this very teeny tiny bun that I've made, because again, I tried to make it as small as I could and as high as I could. And I'm going to get that as high up on that as I can and just loop the ends of the tail sock around that hair. And of course, he has very thick hair that's hard to work through. There's really no right or wrong as to how you do this. Just as long as when you tie your strings, I usually tie it in 2 square knots, but I am not tying it really tight. If you tie it really tight, then the next person is going to have a really, really hard time getting it out. So I just got 2 of the strings tied through. I'm going to come to this side and do the same thing, just kind of open up that tail, get an opening in there. I pull one of them through, and I'm going to pull the other one through the other way. And again, just 2 loose knots, not cutting it in really tight. And now again, his feathers can cover that up, make his hair look a little more natural, but that tail is really high up and in a nice small bun. This should stay clean for a good 5 to 7 days. Some horses are dirtier than others and need done more frequently, especially if they lay down a lot and have a really thick tail. But if you've done a good job with this should be good for a good 7 days easily. So that's why I want the tails put up. Thanks, everyone.